Returners are patient. Notice he's not up to speed. And because that one guy sort of like slipped off a block, it slowed him down or else he would have burst. You notice there was nobody else in the tunnel in order to affect the return. Okay, this is a mister with a wedge to the ball. What do I mean by wedge to the ball? I mean that if the ball is kicked off center, the second line is actually going to form the wedge close to the ball. Now here, because the ball happened to be kicked very close to the sidelines, a great directional kick by the opponent, the wall will never go outside the hash. This is back in 2004. And the reason why I utilize this clip is because you notice the second line wall is not collapsing close enough to each other, and they're too far away from the returner. But if you watch the tunnel start, and you can see it in slow motion, that returner is trying to get back to the middle of the wall. You notice the breakout, some poor technique for leaving their feet, but you'll actually see the tunnel start to establish itself. And again, if the guy on the right-hand side did not lose his feet and attempt what I call a dive block, this guy would have not come off and caused the problem. But you get the idea of the mystery turn and wedge to the ball. Let's take a look at another one. Again, you see guys using shoulder blocks, which is not good. And our drills with our circuits, which we started right after this season, has helped immensely in using our shock and lock technique, and less guys are coming off their block as a result of using those kickoff return circuit drills. Okay, the next slide deals with two different things that need to be established with kickoff return. The first thing is this particular returner, this particular kicker always had a tendency to kick the ball short. What happens then is your front line, as well as your back line, but mostly your front line, needs to short set. That means that they're not ever going to get back to the 30-yard line to begin their fish hooks. If you notice, our guys are setting themselves on the 33-yard line, and you notice we're in pretty good position. All of us together, almost looks like one solid wall. And what's happening here is we're going to be able to stun them before they stun us. The second thing I want you to notice is look at the lead blocker for the returner and watch how many people he sifts through, jumps over, and still tries to take the lead to gain the extra yardage on this particular return. Notice the lead blocker jumping. Notice that he's doing his best to sift his way down the field, and right now he's going to just screen that guy off, which gives us an extra 8 to 10 yards. That's a great effort by that player. Let's play that video one more time, concentrating on the short set and also the effectiveness of the lead blocker. Just a great effort here by everybody on this kickoff return. And that's a pretty good football team that we did that against, Cortland University. Okay, this particular case is, if you have taken a look at my kicking circuits in terms of the drills, I'm going to mention that sometimes returners need to be able to step over people and keep their balance. This is a prime example when a returner who doesn't pick up his feet and maneuver himself to be on balance can lose a golden opportunity to score a touchdown. We're still in our Mr. Return, and we got a great burst in the tunnel but because he's not looking ahead and seeing what the traffic is, and of course the debris on the field, we have ourselves a problem. You notice the tunnel has been created, and he just doesn't see that guy who's coming off the block, and he gets tripped up. Okay, middle returns are not the only returns that we do. We like to attack people sideline to sideline. We don't really run a sideline return, but we like to get to the sideline after we attack the alley. So thus, we're now going to use what we call our Rambo return. If you notice, Rambo return, to keep the rules simple, the front line are going to block the same way they do in Mister. It is the second line that's doing all the work. In the second line, they're all going to get together and bunch up again, and then they're going to break out on their blocks once the returner gives the go command about 5 to 7 yards from the operation. That's the general rule of thumb. When you look at the right wing, you notice he's responsible for blocking the most dangerous man coming to the alley. The two inside players, if you want to call them the right and left fullback or linebacker, they are going to look to kick out the contain. Now, what we preach is if there are two guys to the outside and only one looks like they're going to destroy any part of this return, those two guys will split on each other, and one will take the one that is most dangerous, and the lead guy will probably take the contain to create that alley. The key block in all of this is the backside left wing. His job is to get himself in the middle of the field so that he can prevent anybody sifting from the middle or from the ball where it's kicked all the way out to the left-hand side away from the returner. The only change we make with the front line now is we ask the left guard to block L1 and we ask the left tackle to block L2. Because the returner is going to give a fake as if he is going to his left first in order to execute this right return, that's enough to slow that guy down, unlike Mister, and make sure that we can hit the right alley. Let's take a look at Rambo return, a sideline view. Notice that we've gotten much better in getting the wall unified, getting the lead blocker out, and you notice it didn't take much of a block or just the screen to free that returner. Okay, let's watch that again, and I want you to pay close attention to the right wing who's responsible for taking care of the most dangerous man. As you notice, he puts his helmet right in his face, gets back up, and he's still blocking. Keep in mind that this returner went across the field, hit the alley, and then attack the sidelines. We don't go with sidelines and then try to cut all the way back. Let's take a look at that same kickoff with the end zone view. Notice he's trying to get to the alley. He gets cut off. They force him to the sidelines. And you see some great blocking downfield. I want to play this again because we were very lucky on this kickoff return that went for a touchdown. And the reason why I say we're lucky is because somewhere in the middle of the pack, somebody wants to get a cheap shot at one of their players. This is a rivalry game against Keene College, and this could have called this return back. And right about here, you're going to see somebody who gets away with blocking behind their back, right there. And the official wasn't looking. Gentlemen, you're looking at the only score in the game. That was the difference between the win, and the loss. So you can see how penalties are crucial. We're going to take a look at another Rambo return. However, we're going to add something to this particular return. When we actually run our kickoff returns, we have reverses. Reverses and fake reverses are part of our normal package. We do not have to change our blocking schemes. We only ask our front line and second line blockers to understand that we're helping them have a better blocking angle, and they shouldn't throw their blocks too early. We work on these Rambo reverses quite often, and you're going to see a lovely fake Rambo, and then the ball is going to come out to the right. As you look at the second line, I also want you to see the principle where we're not going to waste two players on a double team. One will actually handle the wide side contain, and the second one will head up the field. Let's take a look at Rambo reverse. If you notice, it was a hash kick. There's the fake. You notice the double team where they split off. Let's watch that again. Okay, where we didn't waste an extra blocker. One's going to take the contain, and one is going to be the lead blocker up the field. That's Rambo reverse. We can also run the same return by calling Leroy. We do something that maybe a lot of kickoff return teams don't do. We actually flop our personnel. That means that the guys that are learning their fish hooks to the wide side of the field totally understand how to get in them, and we find that to be an advantage. The blocking scheme is identical, and we just flop each and every person's assignment from the side of the field. What I mean by that is, if you were looking at the left tackle, he was the right tackle. He still blocks number 3 in from the side of the field that he is on. If it's the short side of the field, obviously he has a quicker block, and if he's to the wide side of the field, he's got to make a bigger fish hook. But the blocking scheme is identical. On next return, and this is if you got two gentlemen in the back line who have the ability to get across the field. If you look at the front side return, front side people, okay, you notice that the right tackle is not blocking R3. He is now blocking R2. Some people call this a swinging gate principle, where we're going to move one complete man down and try to provide better angles for our frontline people. The right guard is now going to block R1. The center, who really likes this return because he doesn't have somebody bearing down on him directly, he's going to be able to make an angle block on L1. And then there is L2 by the left guard, and then L3 by the left tackle. The change in this particular blocking scheme comes from the second line. We are now going to double team the most dangerous man to the alley. Usually that's R3. We will also use this return if we got a guy stationed in the R3 spot, like a lot of teams do, and that's their best kickoff coverage guy, the guy that flushes you out of your return. So we have the ability now to game plan with the normal one of our returns by double teaming him. Then what happens is R4 and R5 will now come across the field and use the same principles as Rambo by kicking the L4, L5 out. If we need to have a double team on the most dangerous man, we'll do it, but most of the time we're able to single block and create that alley. This rocket return will always use a reverse technique so we can hold the backside. Keep in mind, gentlemen, that when you use the rocket and you have a team that does not track well from the backside, a coverage team, who you feel that your returner will never be caught from the backside and you don't have to freeze the backside coverage, you can run a rocket lead and pick up an extra blocker. This could also be used on the hash when a team kicks directionally. Let's take a look at our very first rocket from a sideline view. Notice the second line still bunches up. You see the two guys coming across. And this particular returner wasn't patient enough, but he understands the north and south aspect of returns, and he tried to find the crease. Again, I don't fault the returner at any time if they're actually doing the techniques that we see. We want them to get the most amount of mileage out of the return. And again, if we can't score a touchdown, we want them to get past the 40-yard line. Notice the fake in the reverse. We needed to run it a little bit smoother. And instead of tiptoeing, he needed to really try to bust up that tackle. We can run the same return to the left. We call it laser. The blocking scheme is identical. And let's take a look at some video of laser in action. First of all, this is against a pretty good team from the South. This is Salisbury State University. You're going to see two returns in this game, both with laser reverse action. And this team at this time was undefeated going in, and they were very surprised about our return game. You'll see the second line forming the wedge. There is the fake. It got a little bogged down. He understands the north-south operation. And of course, one of the key things is this is a player who just was a returner in terms of practice skills and drills. Just before the game, our returner pulled up with a hamstring pull prior to the game. But because this gentleman was practicing the techniques during our circuit drill, you notice he made a beautiful exchange in the fake of the reverse. And at the same time, he also understood the concepts of getting north and south, be patient, and let your blocks develop. Needless to say, he is a running back who understands jump cut and zone principles. Those are also considerations when you actually go find a returner. Unfortunately, because the player didn't play much and he didn't see much action offensively as a running back, okay, he ran out of gas a little bit. That's another thing that you need to get your first, second, and third line people who you're counting on, make sure they get plenty of reps, and that when you practice kickoff return, they take it to the house so they get used to working on scoring as well as their conditioning. Because the longer you sit idle, the more problems you have with returns like this. Okay, we're in the same game. We're going to look at another laser return. And what I want you to note is look at the coverage on the left-hand side of your screen. That would be on the sideline closest to the camera. And watch how the reverse action, even for a momentary one step, freezes the backside people that was bearing down on the returner, causes a miss, and then we're off to the races again. Again, this is the same player. It's probably the longest distance he ran during this week, even at practice. Let's just take one more view of it. And let's see exactly the second line forming the wedge. Okay, they went towards where the ball was. And this was a difficult task of holding their blocks that long to get him out in the open. Notice you got to be BYOB, bring your own blocker, or be your own blocker. And you notice he took down the kicker with no problem. Okay, we're going to move on and talk about a couple little situations here. What if the opponents align unbalanced? What if the opponents kick from the hash and or kick to the opposite side of the field? What if the coverage personnel shifts or moves? We've seen that. What we generally do is double call it with our Rancher and Lancer return. If you notice, we like to use Rancher and Lancer to the short side of the field. Obviously, Rancher is to the right, Lancer will be to the left. Once again, it's an alley return. Basically, what we're doing is the two front liners that are towards the call side, in this case, Rancher, are actually going to crisscross their blocks and create the alley for the returner. If you notice, the second line is doing practically the same thing that they would do on Mister, except that once the backside is secured by the left wing, he's going to come underneath and be the lead blocker. That is because that Rancher, most of the time, like Lancer, is run with a reverse. If we find that a team is not going to track us down from the backside, we would run Lancer or Rancher lead. This is Lancer that I have on the slide.